All right, so I think we should be good. Um, Roy, any other items of business that we are adding or should touch on?
I don't think so. Nicole and I had our pre-meeting, and I told her that I'm still having little bouts of coughing every now and then. So if that happens, I'll just excuse myself for a second. But I think this is what we had discussed, Nicole. Can't think of anything else.
Okay. Um, Anyone want to start with updates that they want to share with this group?
Well, let me start because Vern Grubinger and a few other people in Extension who have conducted the soil testing are still not absolutely done with their work. I noticed that Vern also sent out an email earlier today asking for some feedback from some of our agencies, including, I think, John as well. So he's actually looking to put together a comprehensive soil testing report, an assessment, soil testing and assessment report, which some of that we already accrued from the group and will be inserting right into our own report. So I know that's pending. So expect more data coming from Vern and others within Extension.
Thanks, Roy. Anyone else have updates that they'd like to share with the group? Okay. I am going to screen share the draft of the report um, that we have right now and just kind of ask for feedback by section. I'm making the assumption that the most feedback is going to come with the recommendations, so I'm going to try to save some time for that. All right. Okay. And I'm going to mute the aggressive typer. Um, okay. So the first section is just the background section. And Roy, do you mind telling me if there's hands up? Because I can only look at one thing or the other, but
Could you repeat the question? Could I
just
tell
is
you?
there, could you just tell me if anybody
Okay.
has their
All right.
hand up or wants to
I'll
give
do that.
feedback?
I'll do that.
Okay. So the first section is just the background. Um, Anyone have any comments here?
Nicole, real quick, this is Nina.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind just providing big picture, the audience, target audience for this report? And then I know there's some folks from the emergency management SEOC, sorry, I don't know the specific place, but sort of the larger goal and purpose for the report, just so we have that context.
Yeah.
Sure. So there's a few different things. So one is I've provided the draft already to some folks in the interagency recovery group. So Ben got the report in advance, and Doug Farnham also got the report. And I'll be sharing it with other recovery officers, recovery liaisons from other agencies, just so they can kind of see impact. So that's one audience. The committees of jurisdiction in the legislature is another audience. I did speak to Senate Agriculture Committee at the beginning of the session, just let them know that we would have kind of a compiled report of impacts and recovery efforts for the agriculture sector by the end of January. That's our target. So that's another audience. And then just generally having it be um, publicly posted on the recovery portion of our website, along with the other agriculture recovery task force items. So we've got like agendas and recordings of these meetings up there as well. So that's the general overview. Okay, so I didn't hear any comments on background. Moving, and this is, I'm not gonna pause too long here, even though I do know that we need to add some names because we have had some folks help from UVM Extension with the writing, like Roy mentioned, and we've had some others from Agency of Ag who have helped as well with writing and providing data. So this page 2 is just a list of folks that participated in the Ag Recovery Task Force, either by attending meetings or by providing kind of ongoing information and support behind the scenes. We also have the breakdown of the subcommittees, which we have the Farmer Empowerment, Government Systems and Regulatory Recovery, table of contents. All right, and then the impact summary. I'm going to stop here. Any comments on the impact summary?
So somewhere I think I saw an email where somebody thought was it NRCS had noted that some of these numbers might be up in the process of being updated. I am not very sure, but I think Travis had sent a message about updating some of these numbers.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that Travis's email was specific to the NRCS programs. Travis, can you tell me, are the
I
numbers
stand
in this?
corrected if that is the case, but yeah.
Okay. I know I saw Travis join the call, so I don't know if we lost him. Oh, he's still here.
It's probably
Travis,
lunching.
can you speak to which numbers you wanted to update? Was it in the impact summary or in the NRCS program specifically?
His mic is still mute, so he might not be sitting at his desk at the moment. So we probably should come back to that.
Okay, just gonna make a note. Okay. Any other comments or feedback on the impact summary?
Yeah, I just want to note, I know that Vern is looking through this, but I just want to make sure that Vern is comfortable with the UVM extension survey data, since I know there were 2 surveys, one by the Veggie and Berry Growers Association and one by the Tree Fruit Growers, and we did our best to kind of capture the results of those 2 different efforts that occurred simultaneously, and I just want to make sure that's accurate. So Roy, I don't know if Vern's looked through the entire report, but maybe we can just draw his attention to that section and make sure he's comfortable.
Right. I will definitely talk to him. I did talk to him about
Okay.
the soil report, and he was comfortable with what was there, except that there might be some additional updates at some point soon. Well,
Okay.
when I say soon, I mean really, really soon, within a few days. So.
Okay, I made note to confirm with Vern on the impact summary portion. All right. Impact survey data. So this was specifically based on the survey that the Agency of Agriculture did and had open from July 30th to August 28th. Just scrolling through, but feel free to let me know if anybody has any questions or comments on this section. Going with silence is good. Okay, so the recovery efforts section, we started with state level disaster assistance programs. Does anybody have feedback? And most importantly, I want to know if there's anything that I missed or any details in each program that you feel like are relevant we need to add.
Can I insert a statement, Nicole? Many of you remember that a lot of the footage, the drone footage, that also fed into some of the reports that we're doing, was conducted by the UVM Spatial Analysis Laboratory. The director of that was Jarlath O'Neill Dunn. Might I point out that Jarlath passed away a week ago. I believe in a ski accident. Just want to make sure that people are aware of that, and some of you had come to know Jarlath when we did the tour, the governor's tour, and we visited a few places. He was with the group as well. Just the, how delicate life, the balance of life is. Just wanted to point it out.
Thank you, Roy. Yes, it was a shock to lose Jeff like that. He was an extremely fit guy, and his heart just gave out while he was skiing. It's a loss.
Yeah.
I see a hand up.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
there.
Jake.
Hey, Jay.
One suggestion, I don't know if there's time to include this, but some kind of aggregate chart here of the money dispersed through recovery programs to agriculture. The numbers are there, but I feel like some of the effect is lost. What the aggregate scale of relief, and also the need too, that through BGAP, just alone there was $20 million of application need, and only 3.7 million of that delivered, and then the other foundation and nonprofit relief efforts. So that could be a opening, like a sentence in the opening, just to state how much was dispersed through these different entities in total, or a chart just showing that in aggregate.
Okay. Yeah, so I see that it's like in narrative form, so to have like an additional visual that kind of shows it all together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think part of the one point to convey here is that the aggregate magnitude of relief provided, and also how that in some ways the magnitude of how much that still falls short of need in events like this, I think is a point to try to get across.
So Jake, I know you have some skill sets here. What would graphically best illustrate what you're talking? Is a pie chart or some of the kind of chart here that you'd suggest?
Yeah. I'm trying. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I was thinking about that question before you asked it, Roy. So I should have had a suggestion on the ready for visually how to present that best. But let me just think on that, and then I'll give a response back in a couple minutes.
Sounds good. Others on the state level recovery efforts. Nina?
Hey, Nicole. I just wanted to mention, I struggled with this initially. Like, it almost feels like we're trying to give credit to the state in a way that, we don't really deserve credit, because there was such NGO support to make a lot of statewide offerings. So I just wanted to share that. I did read it like 3 times, and I was like, we're not attempting to say that. I think we're saying that there are these programs that were offered statewide. So I'm not sure if there's a way to better clarify that, but I'm sure others sort of might have experienced a similar thought process when they were reviewing that section. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it. I think you did a great job trying to capture what were statewide programs offered, as well as federal programs offered, and you put the disclaimer in, which is great. It's really hard not to credit all the people who did a lot of work day and night throughout the post-flood period. And I'm not sure if others have better recommendations to capture that. Maybe we expand the disclaimer and just, embark a little bit to like provide our appreciation. There was folks working day and night, driving from farm to farm, trying to help people. And they deserve some appreciation. So I don't know if there's any way to capture that, but just figured to throw it out there.
So as far as titles go, I guess my immediate thought, and I'm asking the group if this would help. Right now I have it written state versus federal. Do we feel like it would convey what Nina's trying to say better to use like local versus national instead of state versus federal? Or do you think deeper than renaming?
I personally actually don't think we should switch to local, because I think that kind of denotes like at the community level, and there were many kind of community level efforts that happened. I think state level is the only way that I can think of to differentiate what we captured here. But I do really appreciate the sentiment of, could we expand the disclaimer to acknowledge all the local and community led response and recovery efforts that began immediately following the disaster and continued for months following, as just a way to note that those dollars and those investments and that time is not captured here, but not that it's not of value. It's just too big of a task for this report to try to capture all those local efforts.
Mm-hmm. Nina, do you mind maybe brainstorming a sentence for me to add?
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Marley?
To that end, I wonder if Roy could clarify, in the UVM extension section, it says how much they helped with the soil testing, but I believe UVM also paid for the soil testing. Is that accurate? And if it is, it would be nice to have a sentence in there.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there was payment for the soil testing. We got a couple of grants and we kind of cobbled together some funding for that really quickly. So yeah, I can get a statement written there. I'll make a note of that.
So I talked to Roy right before this meeting, and I was having some trouble with getting Vern's information like copied into the report. But I was able to do that, Roy. So he does give a little explanation of where the funding came from. So
yeah,
maybe we can expand there. It wasn't in the draft that you got, Marley, though. It's in the one I just added it. So. Okay, I'm going to move down to the federal. Oh, so I should just show you all, and I'm going to send an updated draft right after this so you have it. But we were able to add a fair amount into the UVM extension soil testing section. With some really good visuals and an explanation of funding. So you all can take a look at that kind of after this meeting and let me know if you have any feedback. But so we added that, and we also added Dig Deep Vermont. Those were the two things that weren't in the version that was sent out. Those were just added today.
Is there a link, the Dig Deep Vermont, is there a link there if you click on it or not? Or is there a link that could be added?
There's not a link right now, but I can certainly add a link. All right. federal assistance programs. The thing that has been added here since the draft went out is John provided me with some numbers of how many applications were submitted and some deadlines around these programs. So I did add those where I could, but other than that, the section remains the same. Any feedback here? Okay.
Nicole, it looks like there's just one editing suggestion that's in the chat about
Oh.
the spelling of Chris Callahan's name.
Okay,
In the soil testing section.
okay.
I just know you're not seeing the chat, I suspect, because you're sharing the document.
No,
I
I'm
can
not.
monitor. I should be monitoring that. All right.
Okay. I will go back and look at that.
So Vern and I provided the soil testing, and Chris was a part of that. So I don't know how we misspelled it or left something off, but that was inadvertent, and we would have actually caught it, I think, in final edits.
I was totally going to take the blame. All right. Then we're moving down to recommendations, which my assumption was this was going to take most of our time.
Yeah.
So we have a nice little kind of write up into what we've done and some things about, being prepared for resiliency and climate change. And then we move into the farmer empowerment recommendations. So the first one is to maintain and continue investment into critical funding opportunities for farms, such as granting programs. Any feedback here? Dan.
Thanks, Nicole. A question. When I see maintain and continue investment, that's not quantified, and I'm wondering if that's deliberate. Is that a place you don't go in a document like this? Is that a strategic decision? I could imagine trying to quantify that if we thought that was appropriate. Continue grow investment by 5% a year for the next 3 years, something like that, for example. Thanks.
So to answer the question, yeah, I didn't go into kind of dollars and cents in here when it came to that. I kind of tried to keep it broad of like, here are the programs that we already have, and then we offer, typical like, Abby's group. I'm going to look to her for Ag Dev granting programs, right? There are specific kind of report outs that we do every year around those programs and like what our performance measures around how many grants are out and things like that. So I wasn't going to go into like that nitty gritty detail in this report. I was just going to keep it like, we have granting programs, we see great success with them. So that's where I left it.
I also think it's hard to do. I mean, it's very difficult to do it without getting some kind of legislative approval for a number, 4%, 3%. They should set that target, I believe.
Then if I could ask just one follow-up, and thank you for those replies, is the recommendation in fact maintain and continue as opposed to grow and expand?
That is the recommendation in the report, yes. Maintain and continue. Marley? Oh, I don't know who, I think Marley was first because I'm seeing a 1 and then Liz.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a nice addition to Teams to put the numbers in there.
Yeah.
I actually want to follow up on what Dan just said, because that was my comment. Saying maintain and continue implies that there's enough funding. There are enough investments. And up at the top, there's a sentence that says they have overall demonstrated inadequacy in effectively addressing the challenges, which implies there's not enough. I'm curious if there's a reason why we're not, other than normal state agencies and governor approval and all that kind of stuff, if there's any other reason why we're not being a little bit stronger here. And the second thing is that I'd love to see a sentence in there about, even though there are a lot of these resources and grants, farmers are often very challenged to be able to apply for them. Don't know where to go, don't necessarily know how to apply. And many of us in the ag water quality field have discussed this for years, the need for more assistance to farmers to be able to access the programs that do exist. So I would love to see a sentence in there about that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see no reason why we're not open to changing the language on the recommendations per your advice to make it stronger. I think number 2 was Liz. Liz.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with everything Marley just said. And as the note keeper for this group, I think what I'm noticing is that some of our very sort of brainstormy language feels like it's still in this recommendation, and that we probably need to, like, if it's still feasible to make these changes, like I would recommend grow and enhance over maintain and continue. And I think that's probably a through line through a lot of these recommendations. Also just curious, like big picture about these recommendations. They are all quite broad. Actually, number 3 is a little bit more specific, but number 1 and 2, and I think some of the ones in the other sections below feel quite broad. And I'd just love to hear a little bit more of the context of like, what's next after this meeting? To what extent do we want to balance really broad recommendations versus really specific ones? And I think it's really important to have a report that doesn't feel overwhelming, but it also feels like there's stuff missing. And yeah, Roy and Nicole, what's your guidance on that in terms of what would make this a meaningful document? Because I think there's also people who would feel like they worked really, really hard after the flooding and that they're possibly not acknowledged here. Yeah.
So I agree. I think we're open to improving the language to make it a little bit more forceful or louder, so to speak.
Yeah, and I would just add, that's part of why we're having this meeting to do feedback, right? If there are people that are not being acknowledged in this report, or there are programs that we're missing some details or acknowledgements, like I need to hear about that to be able to incorporate it into the report. So.
Nicole, sorry, just a quick question on that. And I might have missed it at the beginning, but I heard you say just a couple of minutes ago that you're going to quickly turn around a draft, a revision to this. But if we had ideas, what timeline are you looking for if I had some written comments?
I would ideally like to have comments in by this week, by the end of this week.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Ben?
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the risk of stating the obvious, this meeting is scheduled in conflict with the governor's budget address. It's happening right now and it's being recorded so we can watch it afterwards. But I have no objection with changing, maintain, and continue to enhance, grow, whatever. But ultimately it comes down to the governor's budget and the legislature's budget. So to the extent that some of us work for the governor, I don't know that we can say anything that's not in his budget address, but as the recovery support function, you can ask the legislature for, or as the recovery task, the agriculture recovery team, you can ask the legislature for whatever you want, you know? So if we need more, say we need more. I'm not sure it'll change much, but there's no harm in saying what you think is needed.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm glad you gave us that guidance, Ben, because I would say I'd be more comfortable saying what we think is actually needed, not constrain ourselves to what we think the political realities are in this moment. And yeah, we can say increase, knowing that, you know, there's certain headwinds maybe against that recommendation, but that shouldn't prevent us from stating what is in fact the need based on what we've learned through this disaster and what we hope to have in place in preparation for the next one.
Yeah, John has put a very relevant note in the chat if you care to take a look at what he's saying there. Then Abby's hand is raised.
Yeah, I want to just ask for a clarifying question, Ben, of you. Is this task force report, well, I guess it's in response to your question, maybe the question is for Nicole and for Roy. Is this report a function of the administration, or can this report speak to the actual need as opposed to what's in the governor's recommend?
Well, Nicole, you go first if you want to, but I'll answer. Of the various recovery support functions that have been laboring since July, this is the only one that has produced a beautiful report like this. And credit to Nicole for good hustle and team leadership in putting words to paper. But there's no kind of official requirement for or guaranteed outcome from this report, other than the informing of the people who will read it. So I think as an agriculture recovery task force, you're free to say and observe anything that is true and important.
Thank you, Ben. That was probably more articulate than I would have been on that topic. But I will also say, I think what I would not feel comfortable doing is putting out something specific, like here is my, recommendation to do this program for this amount of money by this date. But I think to Ben's point, like if we're going to change some language to say grow and enhance over maintain and continue, I think we can do that.
Yeah, I would also encourage you to think about the shelf life of the document, and this document may hibernate until the next bad thing happens, and then a new generation of leaders, legislators, and a new administration may pick this document up in a few years and look for guidance. And so if you're seeing gaps, it's really important to articulate them.
Marley?
I guess I just have to say, Ben, that I really hope that's not the case, that this document then gets set aside until someone else picks it up in the next emergency, because truly I'm hoping that some of these recommendations will be firm enough to create some follow-up work groups or some firm policies, so we don't have to repeat what we did in December or November in some cases, which I doubt was what you were saying, but I just wanted to get
that's
in.
fair. But then, well, we should talk at the end then again about an executive summary, because if an important legislator comes to any of you in the hall and says, give me the elevator talk, what is it that you want done? It has to fit on one page.
Liz?
Was Marley still talking though? I feel like you were saying okay. Well, I feel like we're having a lot of big picture conversations and we haven't even gotten past the first recommendation. So thanks for indulging all of us. Yeah, to me, what both Marley and Ben just said kind of brings up like, what is the role of this task force compared to like all the other incredible and different work that all of us are doing? And I would love to, like, when we get to the end of this meeting, or just understand what the next steps are, because I think I have a lot of colleagues who would be, you know, sort of interested in figuring out how to key in with different next steps, and to what extent should we be pursuing those on our own as part of our normal roles, which some of us have capacity for and some of us may not, and to what extent are any of that the job of this meeting space? I'd love to hear from the organizers around that.
Sorry, I don't know if we're waiting for each other to speak. So your question, Liz, was in regards to what is the role of this task force versus other task forces? I'm sorry, I missed part of it.
I guess I'm wondering, like, what is this task force going to continue beyond these recommendations, or no?
That's a good question. I think in my view, it was that this task force was going to put out recommendations, and then one of the recommendations that we're going to get to is around where is it? Establishing a public-private council focused on coordinating efforts and planning resiliency strategies for the agriculture sector. And that was kind of how I saw this group evolving.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification. That's really helpful.
Abby?
Yeah, I guess two thoughts. One, it's also my understanding that each time we have a natural disaster or an emergency that kind of triggers impact on the ag sector, this task force has stood back up again. So this is not a one and done moment for this task force. It's designed to kind of like reemerge when agriculture needs kind of coordinated emergency response. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this council could be a part of the ongoing recovery efforts in the kind of this near to now somewhat long-term following the July floods. But again, we may all find ourselves here again as official task force capacity whenever the next event occurs. So I think it's sort of like a both and. There's, and I just want to be, and again, I know that the governor's budget address is happening right now, but assuming that there's no dedicated flood recovery dollars for agriculture coming out of the budget, the governor's kind of budget address today, it seems that there's a need to be somewhat clear about then where those resources and that support's going to come from. So to Liz, to your question, I think this is where government is likely to be, or state government is likely to be in a challenged position where there are not resources dedicated most likely to continue recovery efforts. And so like all the other conversations that are happening and all the other kind of collaborative conversations of where's the support going to come from really do need to continue. And maybe many of those get rolled into this private public council. But anyway, that's just where I'm coming from. I think we just have to be transparent about the fact that we're probably not going to see more ag recovery funding.
Yeah.
And we'll see when we all watch the recording, but we just have to be prepared for that reality, I think.
Jill, you have your hand raised. Another perspective, I hope. I think.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate the comment that Abby is making. So for example, I'm just giving you an example, the Ag Water Quality Partnership had a meeting the day after the flood, right? And started talking about who's doing what programs. And then this committee was stood up. And then we abandoned our meetings and basically all started coming to this meeting. It's like seemed duplicative. But I think there's a very important role of just basic information sharing, right? There's a really critical thing that needs to happen, which is collecting data about damage. And who's going to help do that even before we have assistance, right? That enables the feds to get emergency declarations and money, which we know it takes forever. But, being aware of that cycle and having sort of a sort of like, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, sort of in place would expedite some of that stuff. As well as identifying obviously the need for available state funds if there are any. So I really see the importance of there's a strong interface with the feds because of the significant dollars they bring in. Agency has very strong central communications, right? And then we at the local level, we collectively, are the people running around knocking on farm doors saying, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Do you need any help with this? What's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And having all those parties have people in this meeting able to share information is highly valuable. So I do appreciate the idea that there's a structure that will be stood up automatically when something like this happens again.
So Marley, before I go to you, being relatively new in the state and having seen probably the first disaster, the flooding, this was very, very revelatory to me. All the groups that I saw come together and the way they came together and the sequences in which the work was done. I have a very good idea of some of the ways that we could respond in extension in the way we can respond as a result of all of this. So that's one of the good things that happened, and being part of the task force as well got me to know more people who can be part of the recovery and sustaining a long-term type of action or reaction to the problem, to any problems that might emerge in the future, particularly where it concerns issues like mitigation, because I've learned a number of lessons about how to mitigate in the future based on what I saw we all put together and how we came together. So those are some of the things in the back of my mind as a relatively new arrival in the state of Vermont. Marley, over to you.
Yeah, just a very quick comment that I totally understand and agree with Abby's point and what she said about resources. I just want to add that as we go through these recommendations, I see a lot of opportunities for policy and process changes that don't necessarily cost money, that can make things easier the next time there's a flood. So I guess I have a follow-up question though, Nicole and Roy. It's 1:45. How do you suggest we get through all of these? Because there's some really important ones later on as well.
So my feeling is that what I'd like to do right now is go through quickly, and I will read the overview of each recommendation, and then I think we should take comments from there. But I realize that with 13 minutes left, we're going to need to have follow-up conversation.
Yeah.
So I guess, Roy, I don't know if you have alternative suggestions, but mine would be to go through quickly, take any comments in the last 13 minutes, and then ask people to send other updates via email to Roy and I. Or if you want to send them to the entire group, feel free to just reply all to the meeting invite and everybody will get those. But I think we need to kind of continue this virtually.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go through really quickly, and then we'll take the rest of the time for comments. Okay, so the second one is maintain access to essential technical and mental health support services for farmers such as Farm First. Establish a public-private council focused on coordinating efforts and planning resiliency strategies for the agriculture sector. I think it's of note to add in here that I did make mention that we shouldn't just focus on natural disasters here, but also like other ongoing stressors that make things worse during a natural disaster, such as labor and housing shortages. For government systems, advocate for a revision of federal level disaster relief programs. John Roberts left some great information in the chat about what's happening right now with looking at the NAP program, with the crop insurance program. But then also the other relief programs are kind of slow going. And I did make mention of a program through USDA Rural Development, where essentially farmers are excluded because they generate income from their properties, which obviously that's not good for them to not be able to get support as being a business or being a private residence. It seems like they're excluded from both, so that's frustrating. Create additional emergency response capacity by either deploying additional USDA employees or being able to deputize state employees or others in the state on behalf of USDA so that we could facilitate a faster response. Regulatory recovery, maintain and continue to invest in granting opportunities for farms to update infrastructure on their farms. Maintain and continue technical and financial assistance for produce farms regarding post-flood regulatory considerations. Develop stormwater management practices to reduce risk to waste storage capacity. I know that was super fast for all that we have going on in here, but let's open the floor for the last 10 minutes for comments, and then we will follow up via email. Jake.
Yeah, the last one, I feel like there's a connection that like you have to infer about some of the things that are written there that either like can be said more explicitly or like I say as a legislator, I would not know what action to take or what to take away from that recommendation as it's written, because it's, I feel like it's suggesting certain reforms around manure spreading, or it's suggesting, changes around management that, but I don't know, I wouldn't know exactly what. And I feel like there's too much that's left unsaid about that. So I don't know what direction I like as a policymaker I would take with that, the way it's being written.
Mm-hmm. And I did pare that down. So go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, I can
Nina
add
had a
some
lot of
additional information there. And to be honest, this is really like, my brain's like going to like, how do we put this into a strategy and like, who are the people that need to work on it? And I think that's sort of like, we're rushing to get something that will support conversation this session, knowing that this group has not had adequate time to sort of spell these things out into more clear strategies with lead implementers and timelines for that work. But on this specific one, it's really about interagency coordination between ANR and the Agency of Ag. And Marley and I are really taking lead on this and going to take lead on this because it's very important and it's very big in terms of how we work with farms to plan massive, capture systems in the face of increasing rainfall and the risks that we're essentially setting farms up for as we do that. So this is really about a interagency coordination need. And I think we need to probably spell it out a little bit clearer. So I can work on that section, Nicole, if you're willing to review and make sure we hit Jake's points.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and that's helpful, Nina, too, from the standpoint of then also communicating that it might not, that this may not be something for the legislature to pry into because it's more about interagency coordination. So I think that clarity is also beneficial on that side of the equation too.
Marley.
I think Liz is next.
Yeah, Liz was up.
Liz, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, just quickly, and if the answer to this is no, that's totally fine. But to me, like this seems more focused on like the infrastructure and the production area, but it seems like it could be really well connected to lots of other work around resiliency on farms, whether that's buffers, whether that's soil health. Like I just wonder if there's a reason to actually go even bigger about the work that farmers and farm service providers are doing around runoff of all kinds and soil health.
I don't have an immediate answer for you, but I will definitely write that down, and I'm looking to Marley and Nina for.
Yeah, I think it's a Marley and
ongoing.
Nina question.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we can work on that language. And Nina and I have already got some language that I think we'll be sending to you, Nicole. Just to clarify mainly that it's, farms have to capture contaminated runoff. Absolutely. So to make it clear of what we're talking about there. And maybe the language as an actual action item should say that the Agency of Natural Resources and Agency of Ag will continue to work on this. So there is an action item in there. I was wondering if I could go back and add in a couple other thoughts on action items. Or Nina, do you want to address this one before I go to something else?
You go, I'll go next.
Okay. Under number 3 in farmer empowerment, the public-private council, again, I can send you language on any of these if you want them, but it would be good to put a sentence in here about having this council also focus on processes for streamlining and expediting funding, not just coordinating efforts, but also working on the funding itself and how to get it out more quickly where possible. Under government systems, number 2, it mentions USDA employees and state employees, but as Jill mentioned, the Ag Water Quality Partnership met right away after the flooding, and it would have been great if there had been a process already set up to deploy some of those staff, especially from the conservation districts, so they could go out, but they didn't have funding set up for it or anything else. So having a process set on that, standing agreements for them to be able to do that. Also, I'm not sure if this fits into government systems or not, but I know we talked about it in our subgroup. There was a lot of discussion between ANR and AAFM about the floodplain regulations and what farmers are doing to clear some of the fields. And I think there should be a third item here about providing more developing the educational materials now for the next flooding situation about what you can do in floodplains, what you can't do, who to contact, how to best manage that. Again, can send you some language.
Yeah, Marley, I will make sure to send you the link again, but you, being a State of Vermont employee, should be able to access the shared document. So feel free to track changes and add to it. That's fine.
Okay, great. Yep. That was it. Thanks.
Was that an old hand or a new one, Nina?
It's a new one. I'll be brief. I just
Okay.
I wanted to reflect on Liz's comment. And I gotta track like how our discussion in the regulatory recovery space led us to the, maintain investments. But I think big picture, like zooming out, what we're really talking about is resilience on farms. And I hope that we can think about that theme and how to sort of bring it out of all of our recommendations in each of these spaces. And that sort of gets to like, okay, this is a proposal, Nicole, for you to consider, could we come up with like, 1 or 2 or 3 really high level recommendations about how we approach our work coming out of this that may incorporate the concept that we have not yet actualized these strategies, that we need to look at resilience as a bigger picture approach to our work. And that we need to sort of stand up some more easily, whatever everyone was just talking about, easily deployable services, let's say, just to try to summarize some of the big picture themes that come from all these recommendations across the board.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that.
Any other thoughts or comments, Marley?
Nina, let me know if this is a third rail and we shouldn't go into it, but I wonder if we should, under number 3 for the regulatory, mention something about developing a process for manure spreading exemptions that exists before we get back into this again. Just some language in that category about that. It's talking about reducing risks to waste storage capacity, so I think it probably just fits into there to have a process set so we're not recreating it. And
I
we
think
can work on that.
yeah, maybe we talk offline. I think we have enough sideboards and rules and statutes, and it's just a matter of how we operationalize those. That makes
Exactly,
sense
yeah,
on a year-to-year
absolutely.
basis.
Yep.
Okay. So in the last minute, I think next steps here would be to say, I'm going to send out an updated version of this report that incorporates what we talked about today with some comments. And like I said, there's already edits since the last version that I sent you. And then I'm gonna set a deadline of please get me your comments by this Friday, which
Yeah.
would be the 26th.
Friday at what time? What time would you like to see this?
Close of
Nicole.
business, that would be great.
Does that mean 8 a.m. Monday morning for those of us who are weekend warriors?
That means if it's in my inbox at 7:45 on Monday, I won't ask questions.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. This has been, I think, a very, very useful coming together of the minds on this matter. I, for one, really appreciate all the learning that I've garnered from this.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Nicole, for pulling all the pieces together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Now we'll all go watch the budget address.
Thank you.
At 1.5 times.